What's up, y'all? I'm Will here with Schedulefly, and this is the Restaurant Owners Uncorked podcast, one of the highest rated hospitality podcasts in the world, brought to you by us at Schedulefly. We provide a very simple web-based restaurant employee scheduling software backed by legendary customer service. If you're on pencil and paper or Excel, or you're on some software with tons of bells and whistles and features you don't need or use, Schedulefly is the perfect place for you. Easy to use, point, click, and go, and we'll take great care of you. Schedulefly.com, free trial, check it out. Hey, what's up, y'all? Bob Wright, CEO of Potbelly, is on this episode. If you have a Potbelly near you, you probably love it. This is a really cool concept. Sandwiches, soups, milkshakes, but focused on delighting customers and just really cool vibes. And man, this is like a highly educational conversation and a very inspiring conversation from a large franchise organization. So I really enjoyed having Bob on here, and I learned a lot. I ask a lot of questions that are probably basic questions for some of you, but I'm just still trying to learn a lot about how the franchise business works and how to be successful in it. So I hope you get both inspiration and some education out of this. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for watching. More episodes coming soon. See ya. All right, y'all. Welcome again to the Restaurant Owners Uncorked podcast. I am super stoked for the guest we have on today. Bob, just take a second and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Bob Wright. I'm the president CEO of Potbelly. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Pleasure to have you here. You have got quite a track record in the hospitality industry. I did my prep. The only question, all right, so we're just going to have a conversation about hospitality and your story, and then really you focus on Potbelly and where y'all are now and where you're going. But the only question I always ask everybody to start off each episode is, when and why did you get started in this wonderful, crazy world we call hospitality?
My first role was really the beginning of my career. I was 19, freshman, just finished my freshman year in college. I promised myself I'd be doing something that summer where I was earning tips so I could make the most money possible. And I really, tried to get a job as a waiter, and just, I guess I didn't interview well or what, but the day of my deadline, which was May 15th, I said, I'll be working somewhere by May 15th. I went into a Domino's pizza shop in Houston and asked if they were hiring. And they were. And I started there 12 years later. I was still with Domino's. I'd done a number of things, moved up in the corporation, and just never really looked back. I loved it. I thought I was going to go to college to be an attorney. But I truly believe that, God just had a different plan for me. He really thought that maybe practicing the art of serving other people for a living might have been the better thing for me to do. So I've been practicing for about 37 years now, trying to get good at it.
Yeah, well, you've clearly learned quite a bit and gotten very good at it. So you've been with several different brands over the years, and I'm curious, what stuck? Like, you started, you needed a job, you started with Domino's, and then you've been doing this ever since. Like, what was it about hospitality that just hit home, particularly for a dude who was thinking about being an attorney?
You know, I uh, I I just love the people. I mean, I love the people that I worked with. I love the notion of the service. I really love the business. I was fascinated by the restaurant business as a customer when I was a kid. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, so eating out was not something that happened every week in our house. And just the whole idea of that experience of going to a restaurant, or a restaurant experience, even if it was a fast food pickup on a Friday night that we went home and watched television and ate together. I was really, really fascinated by all aspects of it. And when I started with Domino's, they were very early in their development phase back in the late 80s. And so, franchising like crazy. Every manager that I spoke to in the Houston market was talking about becoming a franchisee. And then I talked to franchisees who were franchisees for the last 3 years after they'd been managers. And I thought, what an amazing opportunity. This growing industry doing what turns out I love to do, making food, serving people, working with other people, hiring, developing them, and the business itself was really rocking. Through the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, the chain restaurant business, and particularly the franchise chain restaurant business, just exploded. And so, it just kind of, I think, was a combination of things that I got excited about.
Well, you mentioned, serving others. I mean, that's what, hospitality really is at its core, is taking care of people and serving other people. And so you now have, well, I guess, multiple constituents that you serve, your employees, your team, your franchisee, as well as the guests. Potbelly. Actually, I want to read this to you because I want to see. I've gotten like obsessed with ChatGPT, right? So I go in there and I'm like, "Tell me about Potbelly." I want to see if what ChatGPT says gets this right. It tells me Potbelly Sandwich Shop, commonly known as Potbelly, is a fast casual restaurant chain that specializes in toasted sandwiches, etc. Founded in 1977 in Chicago, Illinois, Potbelly started as an antique store that eventually began selling sandwiches to customers. The concept became so popular that it transformed into a sandwich shop, and then it talks about some of the menu highlights, but then it talks about what I found really interesting, and I want to get your thoughts. It says the Potbelly vibe.
Mm-hmm.
And it says Potbelly stores often feature a warm, quirky, and retro atmosphere with a welcoming neighborhood vibe. Many locations offer live music performances contributing to the laid-back ambience. And then it just says expansion that looks like you guys have got over 400 locations and so forth. So how did ChatGPT do there?
It did really well. I mean, that's a great description of the brand, the history of the brand. It's really a cool history. Peter Hastings started. He tells the story. He went out one day, thought he could expand the sales of his antique shop if they also sold sandwiches. And they had these Potbelly stoves. Part of the store was heated with a Potbelly stove. That's still shop number one. It's still open today, selling sandwiches.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's really cool. And he operated as one location, got so good at selling sandwiches. There were lines out the door. People just knew it was this one little spot, this joint, this institution that you could go visit. And the vibe was part of it. And to kind of entertain the lines out the door, there were live music out on the curb initially. And then that music scene stayed with us for a long, long time. We no longer have live music in all of our shops, but the music is still very much a part of our brand. The curated music list that we play, kind of the reflection of the tone of the brand. And when Bryant Kyle, who we call our founder, bought that first location in 1997, it'd been there for 20 years with just one location. And Bryant was a native to Chicago. He spent about half of his childhood in Washington, D.C., but just thought, this is something that should grow. And so he talked Peter into selling him the business. And Bryant's the one that really grew it into a multi-unit chain, starting in Chicago. His second market that he went to was Washington, D.C. They started in the downtown markets and then kind of started to expand into urban and suburban locations. But a big part of what Bryant thought was so special was this service experience. Part of it's in the design. So, I spent a lot of my time delivering pizzas or working drive-throughs and things. Potbelly was built on a fast casual service style before that phrase really even made sense to a lot of people. You go in, you go through the line. There's really quirky decor reminiscent of that antique shop. When we start at what we call the load station, we're going to ask you what sandwich you're going to have, and we start making the sandwich, then load it into the oven. But while we're there, hey, you want a shake, or any of you guys want shakes? You would ask 5 people in line if they wanted shakes, as if those 5 people knew each other. And one of them might say, you know what? Yeah, I'll have a chocolate shake. And the person next to him, the guy next to him might say, that sounds good. I think I'll have a chocolate shake too. Before you know it, they're talking to each other. They don't even know each other when they walk in, but then they're going through the line. And we're on our side of the counter, we're working shoulder to shoulder with people that we really like. And there's banter across the counter while, you want hot peppers on that? Well, do you want extra oil, or you want just, the regular hot pepper? So it's a food-centric experience, but there's this freedom that's hard to build in chain restaurants. There's this freedom to be yourself, to engage in unique ways with the customer, with each other on the backside of the line. We don't have a lot of scripted phrases. You got to say this at this point in the line. You got to say that at this point in the line. We really do teach to just, establish a little bit of even if it's a few seconds worth of relationship with the person on the other side of the counter. And I don't care if you're 6 or 60, you can spot that level of human authenticity a mile away. And
Agreed.
people are starved for that. They go
Agreed.
their whole day, their whole week, their life, sometimes even at home, and they're just looking for someone to be a real live human being and just, some just authentic kindness. Um, and I love it. I mean, I'm blessed to have grown up in a family where that was normal in our house. And so we grew up
Mm.
loving it. And then, I get to meet people like Dave Thomas whenever I'm working at Wendy's and spend time with developing a relationship with him. And all he wants to talk about is just being nice to people. You try to
Yeah.
talk to Dave about something complex in the business, and he'll take you right back to just saying, yeah, but what people really care about is, and he'd wax on about what was important. The heart, this,
Mm.
it's funny in chain restaurants, there's so many systems and processes. And of course, as a public company, we've got investor relations and really complex things that we have to deal with. And we can never forget that the heart of the restaurant business, it isn't a science. It's art. You're making food. You're thinking about
Yeah.
ingredients. We just yesterday, my team and I were talking about how can we get more heat into the perfect toast of the bread? Because I mean, after all, we make sandwiches. The bread is critical, and should we be satisfied, even though we've built this into a system across over 400 units? What if what if you could make it a little bit better? You watch people and how they eat and how they engage with one another, and pay attention. Are they finishing? Are they going after the same chips? It's a food and human relationships are both matters of the heart. So
Mm.
now in chains, we try to systematize that, but you gotta leave that room, those expansion joints, so that people can be themselves and they can be real. And Potbelly really gets it. I mean, this is a brand. I know I've only been with this brand for 4 years, but I've loved this brand for over 2 decades. It's got something really special. I give Peter and Bryant a lot of credit for institutionalizing that freedom that makes us so special.
Institutionalizing that freedom that makes us so special. Man, what a fascinating concept, because I think about, boy, is that an art. It just that alone is an art, Bob, because when I think about a hospitality business, a single location place, hardware store, guy starts selling sandwiches, realizes that's got a good thing, does that for a long time. Somebody comes in, buys that, figures out how to start growing that. The further you get from I was just talking to somebody about this on an episode yesterday, from the heart of the business,
Mhm.
like what makes this business really special. And it always concerns me that person who developed this to somebody who sees something special, buys it, and wants to grow it, to now here we are. I love hearing you talk like this, because I've come in. Okay, he's the CEO of Potbelly. He's been there 4 years. He's been at Wendy. Like, I think massive growth, spreadsheets, probably stripping out costs. Like, I'm just being very, like, this is what you normally see. And then this thing that was so great is like this there's no heart in it anymore. And like, there's brands that have, in the sandwich space, that
Absolutely.
do toasted, that have come and gone because everything became numbers and spreadsheets, and probably investors that don't really get it, and private equity who's like, we have to focus on the expense side of the balance sheet. And then it's like, well, then this thing just comes apart, because, to your point, hospitality, once you remove the soul and the humanity and the authenticity from it, we are flat out starved for that, man. Like everywhere these days, it's just so rare to find. So if you can figure out that alchemy of like the art and the science coming together to make this like really special thing that can still grow but still has that humanity and that authenticity and that freedom to not just be on a. I mean, you may as well have robots in some places, right? Like, why even bother with humans? Because it's
That's
like
right.
there is no humanity left. So I'm just I admire the way you're approaching this very
Well,
much, and
thanks,
it
Will.
makes me very inspired because it's not an easy thing to do either.
No,
Like
it's
because you
not.
do have investors and you do have like it's
It's
hard to
hard.
do.
It's and everything you said is true. And by the way, it fills a lot of my hours every day. Spreadsheets, cost extraction, investor relations, forecasting models and all that. And I
Yeah,
love it. I mean, I love every part of the business. But here's the thing that I truly believe with all my heart that is the sometimes the truth that we kind of fight against. You see, I I believe every single human being is incredibly special with God-given talents and contributions that they can make that actually make the business better. So trying
hmm
to choke that out and create every single rule strips away. That's why I said that institutionalized freedom comment a little bit ago. I firmly believe when you get down to the human element of business, we as human beings do a lot better with boundaries than we do with rules. Just give me the boundaries and then let me be my very best self inside of those boundaries. Fine. I can't go
yes,
that far. You won't let me do that. I do expect our managers to collect for the food when the customer gets to the end of the line. There are boundaries, but within those boundaries, what I care most about is you just being the best you can possibly be. And as much as
yeah,
people are starved for that if they're receiving the service, if you're on the delivery of the service, I believe you got a lot of people out there that are starved for that too. To say, wait a minute, you trust me to just do my best? You believe that I can make great decisions? You think that I'm special? Um, that's we got a lot of people that aren't growing up listening to that kind of language, and I actually do believe it. And now we have to hold people accountable. If we don't perform, we're going to have that conversation. By the way, that's part of that relationship. And I have
sure,
very high expectations for performance. Just ask my team. But the cool thing about these sort of human elements to the food business is they thread through it all. Our franchisees, at the heart of being a franchisee is to have a lot of freedom to run your own business, but there are boundaries because the brand has certain standards and expectations. You got to buy certain products. You're only going to build the shop a certain way. But once you've done that, I mean, franchisees are the best operators in the country. Because they put their heart and soul into it, and they hire great people that they believe in and they trust. Now, the world's not perfect. I'm not Pollyannish. I mean, some of the worst operators in the restaurant business are franchisees, and shame on the brand who doesn't address that. Shame on the
yeah,
leadership in the brand who doesn't deal with that because those people that are out there swinging for the fences every day, whether they're our general managers or district managers or my senior leadership team, if I don't do the right thing and manage the problems when they come up, then I'm putting those folks at a disadvantage, and frankly, I'm not doing them the best service, and I expect the same thing throughout the organization. So um, I guess that's why I love it so much. It's you got to work both sides of your brain all the time.
but yeah, you go both sides of your brain. I love that. So where okay, so today, how many of your stores are company owned? How many are franchise?
Yeah, when I got here, about 90% of our units were company owned. And traditionally, especially under Bryant's leadership, it was a company owned development model. They had just started franchising under the previous CEO's leadership, and we had about 10% of the units were franchised. They were smaller groups, one, two, three units apiece. Today it's 15. I stated publicly about 3 years ago, I believe this is at least a 2,000 unit chain in the US, in the lower 48, in fact. And by the time we get to that number, we'll be the opposite of that. We'll be 15% company and 85% franchise, or maybe even higher than that. We are growing as a franchise company, and my management team and I have shifted everything towards being a franchise company. And you can't, I mean, it's one thing to sell franchises, but you go into our operation structure, our development structure. We even restructured our company P&Ls at the shop level so they look exactly like a franchise P&L. They carry all the same costs that a franchisee does. A guy I used to work with says you got to eat your own dog food, and we have to live like franchisees. We just happen to be the biggest one right now. And we're having a lot of success. The previous quarter, we announced we have 663 units that are either open or committed, and almost all of those commitments are franchise commitments, multi-unit deals with people with a lot of experience in the space. I met with a franchisee yesterday, and for dinner last night, they're going to build units in more than one market for us, and they're just thrilled. They're in another brand. They're in a Burger King system, but they're with us too, and they couldn't wait to spend today looking at 12 different locations they'll be focused on in this part of the country. So yeah, it's a franchise growth system through and through today.
What changed? Why from company owned to switch to franchise?
Well, it was my belief as I was evaluating the opportunity to come to the brand that would be the best way to grow. When the company went public back in 2013, of course, was flush with capital and used that capital to grow those company units. Today, we have shops in over 30 states from coast to coast, north to south as well. So a lot of that company development was done in a very sporadic way. Opening units in Seattle and Denver and Phoenix, out in New York and Boston, and all the way south of San Antonio on your way to South Texas, and all throughout the Midwest and so on, but never really penetrating those markets. Now, that's good news today, because what we've got is a nationwide brand that's only 430 units that has proven that it can travel. Most brands our size are still trying to prove to their franchisees and their investors that they can move outside of that super regional footprint. We don't have to do that. We not only are in all those markets, but we are successful in all of those markets. So you've got all this white space. At the time I stepped in, it was the beginning of the pandemic. Fortunately, we had a really clean balance sheet, but we weren't flush with a ton of capital to do our own development. The other thing I believed is that coming out of the pandemic, a rapid growth was going to be our friend as a brand. And the best way to do that too was through franchising. And it's a sustainable growth model. There are certainly financial benefits, especially long-term, higher margins, much more predictable. Investors reward franchise growth companies with larger multiples. So there are the business advantages, and I think those are important. I mean, that's a stakeholder group, and I am an investor, so I believe in that. But it's really just the best way to grow.
Tell me about your process of figuring out if somebody will be a good franchisee or a great franchisee. I know, like you mentioned, one that's already with Burger King, so you've probably got a lot of folks that have experienced or shown a track record of success in another brand. What do you do with folks that are saying, I'm going to raise my hand for the first time, I want to be a franchisee? What are the criteria that you look for, that you feel like, I know there's no guarantees, but that you really try to distill down whether this person could be a great representative of your brand?
Yeah, it's a really important question. It's a privilege, not a right, to be a franchisee in any brand. And we believe that. We want to choose who becomes a franchisee with our brand. So those criteria that you're talking about are critical. Good news is they're very similar to a lot of other decisions that we make. Is this candidate, or first of all, are they financially viable? And we don't think that's the most important thing, but without it, there really isn't anywhere you can go. It is going to require capital and commitment financially to develop. We're looking for somebody who's got operations expertise and capability, and they don't always have both. And then we certainly want someone with development expertise and capability. Same thing. Those are really the three key criteria. If you look at a multi-unit franchisee of another brand, we have so many ways we can evaluate those three criteria. I mean, we can go visit their restaurants. Are they operating well? Do they have good people development systems in place? Have they got good oversight and controls of the business, as well as their customer experiences and so on? Super easy to evaluate if they've got an existing business, but the proof is in the experience. Some are multi-unit franchisees who've never developed, though. There's a lot of franchise to franchise transaction activity out there. Franchisees are buying businesses from one another for the sake of buying the earnings, but they really don't have the experience of developing and finding real estate, working with construction and engineers to go ahead and build the business. So we're looking for that expertise as well. We do look for brand fit. I literally talk to people about, why Potbelly? Some of the stuff you asked me, why Potbelly? What do you love about our menu? What do you love about our service experience? And I'm looking for that authentic reaction to a description that says why they're attracted to us. That matters a great deal for a franchisee. They're typically going to spend decades with a brand whenever they buy into a brand, often passing the business from generation to generation. And so you want them to be interested in this brand, not just in franchising in general. We obviously have systems and tools, and some of those spreadsheets that you mentioned, we're going to do those evaluations in a rigorous way, in a consistent way. But those are the basic criteria. We're drawing franchisees from existing brands. There are a lot of QSR in particular, Burger King, Wendy's, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, that would love to add fast casual to their multi-branded portfolio. They like the future of fast casual. They like the growth of it. They love the operations. It's an operator-friendly model, far more than drive-through or delivery is. And so many of them, as I mentioned, they're family businesses. They may have a growing family, and they're looking for another business to maybe put in the hands of one of their other family members. So we make a very nice additional brand. And then there are some that maybe have a lot of development experience, maybe not a ton of restaurant operating experience, but maybe they've operated a number of businesses. Those are very great. They're great franchisees too. In fact, they can often be the fastest developers because they really understand development. But they will even tell us, I want to partner with an operator, maybe an equity partner that's got 10, 15, 20% of the business that's going to help me really run the daylights out of the business too. And so it's usually a combination of those skills. We have franchise with someone who's got all of that expertise, but they needed an investor. And so they bring some equity investment into their deal. We vet the investor as well, but it's usually that combination. And I tell you why us though. That's what do we choose? I tell you what we also care about. Franchisees are looking for. Why would they choose us? We've got great volumes, 1.3 million average unit volumes in the fast casual, especially in the sandwich space. They're the envy of that section. Really good margins. We talked about last quarter, our company margins are approaching 16%. Our sales to investment ratio, which franchisees pay very close attention to, the annual revenue versus the cost to build the location, we're at about 2-to-1. Drive-through QSR is like 0.9. So, if you spend $650,000 building a Potbelly that does 1.3 million, the return economics on that, given our sales volume and our margins, look very attractive compared to other options that franchisees have. But one of the big ones is they love the brand and they love the white space and they love the sector. There aren't many, it's hard to name one actually, a fast casual concept that has our volumes, that has our unit level economics, investment and operating economics, that has this kind of brand powerhouse strength. People love Potbelly. And wait a minute, you're selling 10, 20 unit development territories where I can have exclusive development rights over a certain market. Not a lot of choices that fit all of those, check all of those boxes for franchisees. So we get a lot of interest and we can be selective, which is great.
That's a good position to be in, and that's a very compelling value proposition. You mentioned that it's more operator friendly than delivery and drive-through. Help me out with that. I'm not questioning that. I don't understand that. Why is that?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. It's one of the things I love about this new home I have here at Potbelly. Look, drive-through QSR with menu expansion, with labor constraints, with all the technology, all the equipment that's necessary. You think about hours of operations now, even my former brand open for breakfast, open till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. The
Mm,
management complement that you have to oversee that, the airborne grease from the fryers and the grills and everything else. Everything I just mentioned, you won't find a lot of that in Potbelly. We're a lunch and dinner concept. We do not have fryers. We don't take 2, 3 hours to clean everything before you leave and go home, where you kind of high five the person opening for breakfast the next morning on their way in. Um,
right.
I was in a shop last night before I met with those franchisees, and the manager of that location used to work in full service where we had a bar, and all the issues that brings with your employee base and your customer base, and the service staff that were fighting over tables and everything else. He's been with us for about 5 years, and I was still at the shop when he was ending his shift and heading out. His name is Matt, and I said, "Hey, Matt, thanks a bunch. Great day. Great to be with you today. We'll be out of here shortly." He goes, "Well, hope it's okay. I leave you guys, but my daughter's got a soccer tournament." Well, I know this guy, and he hasn't missed a soccer tournament or a soccer game in over 3 years. And he went just as many years in his previous role where he never got to go to a soccer game. And so,
Yeah.
when you're thinking about as a franchisee operating a business with managers with that level of satisfaction, with the ability to staff, with this fun environment where I mean, we get to select our staff in our shops. In QSR, and I'm just speaking from my own experience, I'm not knocking the industry. Some of my favorite people are QSR franchisees and
Yeah.
operators, and I spent, decades doing it. But you're not able to be nearly as selective because you got to get staffed, and you're not necessarily drawing the same breadth of potential talent that's coming in. So franchisees in their hearts are often operators, and they see those differences, and they're excited to have a chance to. I'm not going to say it's easier, it's just different, and some of the
Yeah.
complexity really just doesn't exist here.
How many franchisees, not franchise location, but how many franchisees do y'all have?
Oh, let's see. We're signing all the time, so we're between 50 and 60 now.
How many locations does an average franchisee have? And I guess that number may grow over time, but
Yeah, the better. I don't evade your question, but the because we are where we are with development, our franchisees are signing multi-unit development agreements. We call them shop development area agreements that range from on the low end around 6 units, on the high end to maybe 16, 18
okay.
units. And our philosophy is this is rooted in my experience and the rest of my team's experience. We don't want to sign development agreements that both the franchisee and us as a company aren't confident the franchisee can complete in 8 years or less.
That was my next
Yep.
question. Okay,
Yeah.
got
I
it.
mean, I've been with brands where we signed 100-unit deals and, signed the entire country in an international market to a single franchisee. And they're going to, the news releases, they're going to build 120 units. Well, it never happens. There's a pace that you can keep, and if you're really good, maybe you can build 3 or 4 a year. But our expectation is that if you sign a development agreement with us, you're going to build a unit per year, but no more than 8 years. So that 16-unit deal I told you about would get 8 years. They're going to have to build 2 a year. Now, I'm really evaluating that development capability for that
Mm,
franchisee to be able to fulfill that. And many can, but we've got a franchisee in our system that at one point had 76 Domino's pizzas. We got another one that at one point operated a QSR chain of over 200 locations, and they built most of those. So when they bring their team to the table and say, "We know how to develop," I know they know how to develop. I've seen it. Um, But somebody else might have real estate experience, got great operations experience, got the capital, but they say, I'm more comfortable if I bought off a 6 unit piece of Orlando, or a smaller part of a market in the Southeast somewhere. And we will craft that area for them. We also map it to include targeted trade areas within their exclusive territory. And we help set them up with brokers. So they start looking for real estate in all of those trade areas at the same time, trying to help them get started. So yeah, our average franchisee is building 1 to 2 units a year.
Okay. And do you have franchisees that go into markets where you have company-owned stores? Like, do you enable them to bring those into the fold too, or
Yeah.
is that part of that process on
Yeah,
occasion?
it's a great question. The history here was, once we entered a market as a company market, we would never let franchisees come into that market. I never have had that experience since my early days in Domino's in the 80s. Even Houston, which was, a heavy company market, it was commingled with franchisees too. And so, yes, we are bringing franchisees into. We have shops in Dallas and Houston and Austin and San Antonio and Phoenix and Denver. We still have shops in Portland, and I absolutely welcome a franchisee into that market. Our founder, you heard me mention Bryant Kyle. Bryant and I talked to each other before I took this job and kind of struck up a relationship that both of us enjoy. Bryant became a franchisee. He and his son are now franchisees in Washington, D.C., which I told you is one of the market. He spent time there as a child, and it was the second market that he invested. Well, we share boundaries in Washington. So we still have company shops in Washington, and he's got his franchise shops, which we sold him some, but he's developing even more than we sold him. And then across the river in Virginia, we still have company shops. So we absolutely, I think we all get along really well, and we should build out these markets and finish the development that we know we're not going to do. We're going to do that through franchise growth.
How many do y'all have? A bunch of locations in the Carolinas?
We don't. We have a few, but we don't. We've still got plenty of franchise development opportunity in the Carolinas.
Yeah, I'm in Charlotte. I mean, I know you've got at least one here. I've been to the one. There's one uptown. I have a friend, by the way, who's in Atlanta. Told me today that Potbelly's her favorite sandwich place, favorite brand, loves it. Went on and on about how great. I was saying I was, coming to do this.
Well,
And she how much she loves Potbelly.
She should call us. We just sold our very first multi-unit deal in the state of Georgia. It's in Atlanta, no surprise. But it's not for the whole market. So yeah, we literally just began. We don't have a single Potbelly in the state of Georgia, but we're well on our way. We've in fact, I spoke to that franchisee recently as well, and they've got a beat on 3 leases. So they feel like they're ahead of the game with what their development commitments were in that market.
I wonder, she must have, well, you're in Chicago. She was in Chicago a while. I'm assuming that's maybe where she got dialed in, but she went on and on. Is that right? Are you in Chicago?
Yeah.
Yeah. She must have gotten it. She was elated. She's like, "What? Oh my God, I love that." Blah, blah, blah. And went on and on about how great she thinks your brand is. Well, so one of the things I wonder about, and I'm gonna, there's this issue that seems to arise sometimes in certain brands, and gosh, you've been in multiple ones that have large franchise audiences. But you hear about these issues where the franchisees get frustrated with the franchisor. What causes that, and how do you mitigate? I mean, it's probably impossible to ever, make everybody have it. How do you solve for that, Bob, and try to mitigate that challenge? And I know of one brand, I won't say it, but literally there is a franchise association for this brand that like 80% of the members joined it, and they are now suing the franchisor. I don't know if that's public, so I don't want to say whatever, but I'm like, oh my God, really?
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
that's where I started to learn about this stuff. So I'm just curious. You obviously know that relationship can be adversarial. How do you mitigate that?
Yeah, look, I think you're absolutely right. There's plenty of that history in a lot of brands, and it to me, when the management team starts to focus on what the brand can do for them, what the franchisees can do for them, what the business can provide for the investors, and they don't recognize that they have these other stakeholder groups that need their care and attention and focus as well. uh, those are the times that, sometimes you see the franchisees not getting the proper attention. And what does attention look like? If sales are down, franchisees are looking to the brand leadership to understand the consumer, understand the marketplace, maybe consider some different options with marketing. Maybe sales are up, but they're doing it in such a way that they're driving profits down. And franchisees need that cash flow. In many cases, they borrowed some money to build their units, or they borrowed money to buy the units, and they're not greedy people. I mean, my experience is they're very eager to invest in their business. They live modestly compared to what they could live like given their cash flows and so on. But they've got their family fortune tied up in these businesses, and if they feel like their businesses are being treated in such a way that they're being financially harmed, then they want to get the attention of the leadership to see if they can right that ship. The other thing they get exercised about is if there really isn't care for the brand itself, because they understand that their value is rooted in the strength of the brand. You're talking about your friend. One of the things I love about Potbelly, I often wear lapel pins on my coats if I'm on a plane or something. And every single time someone recognizes it, wait, are you at Potbelly? Oh, I love Potbelly. And then they want to tell me why. And they often ask me questions as if I don't know things. Have you had the cookies before? Yeah, I've had the cookies. I love the cookies. It's like, what's your favorite sandwich? And it's just protecting that brand love is the responsibility of both the franchisees and the brand. And when the franchisees start to feel
Mhm.
like, wait a minute, you're not even providing the proper care and feeding for the brand. You're working at kind of contrary to the future value of my business that's rooted in this. And they feel as if they don't have a voice sometimes. That's why you see these franchise associations, or franchisees will maybe organize around someone willing to go talk to management. I've seen it where the franchisees have asked for audiences with the board of directors. And um, and you can see in some companies where the company continues to do well, but if you look closely at the franchisees, they're not doing that well. You see it in bankruptcies and fire
Mm.
sales and lawsuits, because those all have to be published. Thank goodness we are regulated, so you can find it that way. But that's what happens. It's it's a breakdown in that balanced sense of service. We have an obligation to these groups to try to help them in every way we can with their business success. Now, they've got obligations back to the brand too, and it's beyond just paying royalties. We have a lot of mutual interest, and if that relationship gets out of whack, somebody's going to start talking about it.
This is a situation where private equity's involved, or private equity got involved and then
Hmm.
sold it to another private equity. And this is where I get like, that's this part of me that's just like, God,
Yeah,
that is 100% science,
it
spreadsheets,
is.
people that don't care about all the things that you talked about throughout this episode. And you feel for the franchisees because, you're right. And you may not, I didn't see it from the outside, but you start hearing that and you just think, you hit it the nail on the head, which is they're clearly um, in it for
Yeah,
themselves and not focused on, I mean, at the end of the day, all of us who have businesses, it, it just comes down to, are we taking good care of our customers? Like they come, like the customer has to have a great experience. If the customer has a great experience, everybody's going to win. Always, right? And so that's where you start, and then you build around how do we create that great experience. But if you lose sight of, like, each and every, as you said, each and every individual has value, and when they experience our brand, they should feel that we authentically care that they're there.
Yeah.
They are spending their hard-earned money, which is coming harder and harder these days, and we're given less and less choices as inflation has jacked up the cost of everything. So do we appreciate the fact that when that person comes into our four walls, that they are making a conscientious choice to spend their very hard-earned money on not just our food, but our experience and how they feel, right? Like, as Maya Angelou said, people don't remember what you said, they remember how you make them feel.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's what, and that's your bit. Look, you read Danny Meyer Setting the Table, and you think, like, every business should be, I think, if you're running a business, then you should be in the hospitality business, whether you're serving them food or, in my case, software or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Hospitality is the core of any great business, right? Like, that's what makes a business special, because the customer says, maybe it's conscious and maybe it's subconscious, but they just know they feel good
Mm-hmm.
when they interact with your brand.
Mm-hmm.
And what you said at the beginning of this is we're starved for that. We're starved for that in, like, every domain.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk to my friends, like, I run around with a lot of, entrepreneur buddies and business owner folks. And we just talk about how it's so, if you run a business, this is a fortunate thing for you and your business, but it's an unfortunate thing for our culture and our society right now, is that the bar is so freaking low for just nailing the basics.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, you pick up the phone when somebody calls,
Mm-hmm.
you look them in the eyes when they are across from you, you recognize that they're important. The bar's so low that if you just get the basics right nowadays, you're like, oh, this incredible brand where you're going, but we just do the normal things that are common sense. Wow, that's amazing now. So it's like, good for you, but it sucks, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's where we are. But it gives the opportunity for brands like Potbelly to just create the experience that my friend clearly has experienced. And she didn't say, it's the best sandwich I've ever had. I'm sure it's great. I'm sure the food's great. It's just, I love Potbelly. And that, so hats off, because, like, you're creating an experience that she loves. And that is all part of what y'all are trying to do, and to do well, and then figure out the art as we go back to, of, like, how do we take that and scale that from 400 to 2,000 locations, but still get it right every time.
Yeah. I really appreciate your point of view on that. Our foundation of our 5-pillar strategy is it's the brand itself. You can't have a strategy. Our strategy is really simple and straightforward. It's about food and people and great operations that delight customers, and our digital work, and of course growth through franchising. But the foundation, our mission is to delight customers with great food and good vibes. And I tell you, we worked on that language for a long time. That word delight, and our customers, we talk internally, franchisees are customers.
Mm-hmm.
And when someone is delighted, it's it's not impossible to attain. Like you say, the bar's low for satisfaction. Satisfying someone is, it's kind of table stakes, frankly. But delight is just that step above. And we talk about this. I talk about it when I talk to general managers and our GM conferences and things like that. When you're working our line and someone comes through the line, if you want to know if the customer is delighted, all you have to do is look at their face. All you have to do,
Yes.
just because you're going to see it. There's going to be a little brighter face. There's going to be a smile. There's going to be, they're going to be thanking you when you should be thanking them. And how do you do it? Let's go home. Let's go home to what matters the most. That good vibe service. Be yourself. Be genuine. Be authentic. Make them feel what you're offering up in terms of service, but especially great food. We are a restaurant, so the food needs to be fantastic. And before my dad passed away, I love having him come visit. And I just, I like to make him sandwiches. His whole life he worked as a machinist and packed his own lunch and packed a sandwich. So it was always cold sandwiches. But when I made dad a sandwich as I got, grown up and on my own and stuff, I would toast the sandwich and I'd add salt and pepper and so when he would come visit, I'd say, "Hey Dad, you want a sandwich?" "Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're gonna make that roast beef sandwich the way you did, or how about ham and cheese?" And I said, "I'll make it whatever you want." And Dad was not as he didn't gush with the same language that my generation, your generation uses, but he's a sweet, sweet man. Said, "Dad, you know why those sandwiches are so good?" He goes, "Because you toast them and you make them hot." And I said, "No, no." I said, "It's the love." I said, "That's the secret
Yeah.
ingredient. That's why it tastes great." And it was a great sandwich. I love cooking for people, but that is the essence of what you're trying to accomplish. And if you remember that, in a lot of ways, my investors are customers. I understand what they're looking for in this relationship, and I think it's my responsibility to try to deliver that. Same thing with franchisees. This is not a complex business. It's not a high wire act. Everybody kind of understands what everybody's looking for. I don't care if you've ever worked in a restaurant. You get what we do. We're back there with bread and meat and cheese and soup, and people are familiar with the concept. But it's our desire to do it in a way that delights you, that shows up on your face, that makes you smile and go, that was good. That uplifted me where it matters a little bit. Doesn't have to be a lot, but that's the target, is that uplifting. We keep doing that, no one can touch us. People are going to continue as long as I'm around and beyond to say, "Oh, wait, you're with Potbelly? I love Potbelly. I love and they do it that too. They slow down. I love Potbelly." It's like, that's what I'm after. That's the magic right there. If we ever lose that, we're in trouble.
You're in trouble. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
I love it, man. What a wonderful conversation and a very educational and inspiring conversation, Bob. I cannot thank you enough. I know you're a very busy dude, so taking the time to come on here and share this story and what y'all are doing and why you're doing it and how you're doing it has been an honor, and I really appreciate you giving us the opportunity.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. It's been great to be with you. I'll just leave you with this notion. This is an amazing company filled with people that I'm in awe of, and we couldn't do it without them. So, great group of people out there swinging for the fences, and I'm so grateful for them. Grateful to be with you today, and thanks for spending the time with me too.
Y'all, if you listen to this and you got a Potbelly near you, I'm guarantee you're probably like kind of mouth watering right now, wanting to go try out one of their great sandwiches or their soup or their milkshakes and enjoy the good vibes. So we will wrap it with that. Thank you all for listening, for watching. Bob, thank you for joining. Appreciate you very much. And I will probably be in Columbus again in the next few months. So I'd love to get in touch and come enjoy a meal with you
Yeah, I'll
next
buy
time
you
I'm there.
lunch. It'd be great.
All right. Take care. Have a good day. Tell all your team at Potbelly thank you, and I'll be in touch. Appreciate
Take
you.
care, Will.
All right. See you.